Chicago.
Hello, I'm Leona Kuhar. Welcome to another episode of Bridging Chicago. During episode 15 of this season, we spoke with Ellen Ray, the CEO of Chicago Cares, and Cecile DeMello, who is a member of the board of directors of Chicago Cares and the executive director of Teamwork Inglewood. On this episode of Bridging Chicago, we welcome Rob Pabon, a manager of strategic partnerships with Chicago Cares, and Joel Rodriguez, one of the organizers of Southwest Organizing Project, or SWOP. As we learned during episode 15 of Bridging Chicago, Chicago Cares is a Chicago based not for profit organization that builds partnerships with community organizations on the south and west sides of Chicago and mobilizes volunteers to work with those organizations, effectively serving as a bridge joining volunteers and community organizations. The Southwest Organizing Project, or SWOP, is a broad based community organization serving communities on the southwest side of Chicago. We are very happy to have the opportunity to learn more about Chicago Cares and another one of their partner organizations. Gentlemen, welcome to Bridging Chicago.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me.
So, Rob, I would like to start by asking you to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself. Are you from Chicago? How did you get involved with Chicago Cares? So, just fill us in a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. So, I originally was born in Chicago, west side of Chicago. At a young age, moved out to the western suburbs where I live now in Berwyn, but really got connected to Chicago Cares through volunteer opportunities. I was working in the nonprofit sector with youth, and I had, this urge to work with older adults. I wanted to make that connection, especially on the northwest side. And so there was a project, like a senior meals project, and me and my girlfriend, now wife, wanted to volunteer and connect with folks and serve meals and build relationships with the folks in the area. And so that project really started to get me more involved in Chicago Cares as a volunteer. And years later, a position opened up, and I applied for that position to manage programs with the organization. But I've always had this sense of service instilled in me at a young age. My mom was very supportive in that and really pushed me to get involved in community service and volunteering within the church community, within our larger community. And so the organization just spoke to me, and especially in the ways in which they started centering community more, really wanted to
Mhm.
be involved in that work.
So, you think your sense of service was stemmed in childhood with your mom encouraging it?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. My mom was a religious director for the archdiocese, and so she was always planning events within the church for youth, for families, and so I was always volunteering with her. But really, just building that understanding that community is key. It's important for all of us to thrive. Having
Hmm.
those relationships, those connections, and that
Yes.
serving each other, serving with each other is a really important aspect of building the fabric of that community. And so that was something at a young age that I learned very quickly, being involved in some of the work that she was doing, and also building my own community as a young person.
So, there's strength in numbers, definitely.
Yeah, yeah, that's the collective versus individual, right, mindset or framework. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that you get in different spaces within society or just life in general. And I think that was one of the learnings I had from being from a smaller community, a tight knit
Yes.
community, and really everybody on the block taking care of each other type mentality, and having that I guess that spirit of mutual aid before even knowing what that meant.
I know, looking back at our podcast with Cecile and Ellen, they kind of said the same thing about the sense of community and how they grew up with that sense of community.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Joel, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in service organizations?
Yeah, so yeah, I was brought up on the south side of Chicago. My father was a pastor um, on the south side in a small Pentecostal church, and he was very passionate about engaging community and really serving others. And he eventually, his work evolved into mission work and going to Guatemala. He was um, a key part of establishing an orphanage down in Guatemala. So I really saw that growing up, and my mother also. My mother just very giving and very available to not only folks from our church but to the larger community. So it really came. My sense of community, my sense of my accountability and my responsibility to the community. Really, I inherited and adapted that from their practices. So I very much want to continue their legacy. Um, my work with the Southwest Organizing Project, it so I will say we don't consider ourselves a service organization. We do community organizing. That doesn't mean that we don't provide services. We use services to engage the larger community, build leaders through that, and address needs that they have. But we do that with them, not for them. There's something that really, at first it took me a little bit to kind of digest. I was brought up with the golden rule, do for others as you want them to do for yourselves. In community organizing, we have something that's called the iron rule, which is never do for others what they could do for themselves. And
Mm,
they agitate each other. Those both of those, but they're both based on love, because we what we want is for folks to be able to do for themselves, folks to be
Right.
able to get to the point where they can and they can live the types of lives that they deserve. Um, in my role in SWOP, it is we organize people and we organize money to really with the community to address the inequities, to address the desires of folks to build a community that we all have a vision for. And so we do institutional organizing. SWOP is made up of 44 member institutions, and that means that we consistently sit down and have discussions through relational meetings, and we talk about what needs to be done and how we're going to do it and how we're going to move to action together. So we organize, but we also there's definitely the room for providing services for the community.
And when you say SWOP is a broad-based organization, I understand that it's been around for over 25 years,
Correct.
and it was started with a religious organization, and it just expanded to include other religions and health organizations, educational organizations. So, I mean, when you use the term broad-based, it really is.
Yeah, that's something that we pride ourselves in. That we try to be as inclusive to the whole of the community, and
Right.
I think early on, SWAP. I wasn't there in its inception is in 1996, but early on, folks that were mainly part of the Catholic tradition, they understood that when it came to addressing the needs of the community, it cannot be done through just a Catholic lens. It had to include everyone. And so through relational meetings, folks began to build those types of connections, one to one, really grassroots. What is it that there was an appetite for? What what are the things that folks really wanted to move on immediately? And it was through that process that SWAP began not only to engage individuals in the community, but institutions, and
Mhm.
really hold each other accountable to what institutions should be doing, and also individuals, residents in the community should be doing, and that's how SWOP was formed.
So, and from the research that I did from your website, it just really seems to connect about um, including different ethnic backgrounds, religious backgrounds, racial backgrounds, and tell us about the communities that you do serve. What are the neighborhoods?
Yeah, so we serve primarily Chicago. There's parts of Gage Park. There is some relationships to work that's happening through our safety work in West Inglewood. There's
Mhm.
a bit of Ashburn. So those are the main areas on the southwest side, that the communities that we serve. And yes, you're right. I mean, it's the members that make up SWAP uh, are of different faith traditions. There's schools, there are nonprofit organizations, there's different um, folks that a development corporation. Like there's different institutions that make up SWAP, and that I think that's something that is a remarkable about what we've been able to build together.
Yes. So, Rob, during episode 15, Ellen spoke very passionately about her role with Chicago Cares and the impact that the organization makes by partnering with various organizations. Can you share with us some of your thoughts regarding Chicago Cares and tell us about your role as a manager of strategic partnerships?
Yeah, definitely. So, as a manager of strategic partnerships, I work with organizations just like SWAP throughout the south side of Chicago. And really, what I try to do with them is focus in on the goals and the vision that they have and how we can bring volunteer support to those goals, right?
Mhm.
And also just really shifting the narrative and power within the volunteer, I guess, management sector and world when
Mhm.
we're bringing in maybe corporate groups or other volunteer groups for them to understand and learn and get educated on the fact that this work has been happening already. There are experts in the community, and they lead this work, every single day. And so, really, we're here to stand in solidarity. We're here to work with folks, not for them, as Joel
Yes.
talked about, and be, supplemental and supportive in any way we can be. And so, I think those, the work that I've been doing. Relationally has been transformative for me. I think it's been transformative for our organization. I tell Swap all the time when we have meetings that they challenge us and they push us and they continue to agitate us, right, just as much as we agitate others in the work
Yes.
that we do, so that we can be our best selves as an organization and truly live into our mission. And so I think that these partnerships that we have with community organizations and lead agencies, I mean, our work wouldn't be possible without those relationships and without having the opportunities, to have conversations, powerful ones, around impact and around navigating community, around relationships with corporations, volunteers, things like that. And so, really learned so much being in partnership with organizations throughout the South Side.
Yes. So, Joel, you talked about some of the organizations that are part of SWAP, but I also understand there's coalitions that you're part of. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, being part of coalitions, I think it's very important to us, and the reason is many of the issues that SWAP works on, it's much greater than just our community or the city. It really impacts our nation, and I would even dare to say the world, right? Issues
Yes.
around immigration, around access to affordable housing. So it's very important for us to be in relationship not only with our community and our institutions, but also other communities and other cities that have that share the same values and have the same objectives, and that collectively we want to build our power to accomplish all that we can for our communities. And so we're part of coalitions like United Power. We work really closely with ICER on immigration issues. We're part of the CP4P violence prevention work. So there's a number of different um, coalitions that we're part of, and we use those to deepen relationships, to strategize together, ultimately to get us closer to the goals that we have for our own families and the communities that we are accountable to, but also we're global citizens here, right? We know that we're accountable to each other, and when our community or when another community is successful and is moving forward, we know that we all win, and so we want to be part of that.
Yes. How do you get to these organizations to join with you to these coalitions? How do you get involved in that?
Yeah, I think um, you know I, it when we talk about organizing, there is one central tool that we use, and it's called relational meetings, one to ones, what we call them. And an organizer is not an organizer if they're not having these one to ones. And so as organizers, we are actively strategizing and connecting with folks, to think about other ways that we can get build more power and get the wins that we want for our families. And so, being part of these coalitions, it's natural for us because these coalitions are made up of folks that are fighting for the same thing, and so we are connecting with folks one to one. Through other work that we're part of, we may be in a space where someone mentions some things and we're like, aha, I want to connect with that individual. But also, I think organizations like Chicago Cares, and other organizations, they say, hey, Joel, SWOP, I think you all should be in relationship with this organization, or with this corporation. And I think very grassroots, these relationships and these coalitions are built, but it's really around a central idea: how can we build power for our communities and for the folks that we're accountable to?
Mhm. Joel, I understand that you've recently been selected to participate in a program called Bridging Fellows. And that's with the independent sectors.
Correct.
So, can you speak on what that it was? I was excited to learn more about independent sector and their programs. And first of all, I'd like one of you to, or both of you, to tell us about independent sector. And Joel, I absolutely would like you to tell our listeners about um, the program Bridging Fellows.
I know we're both very much, Rob and I, we're both, um, uh, we have knowledge of the organizations. So Rob, I can follow you, and I can fill in any gaps.
Yeah, so from my experience, independent sector is a convener, right? They're a membership organization, groups of corporations, organizations, nonprofits, professionals are members of this space. And really, what I look at it for is it's a space of learning and professional development, but also just growth. And so, this particular fellowship is amazing. I'm really excited that it's going to continue to be around, and an opportunity for folks to learn and sharpen their skills around bridging. I know that that's a conversation that a lot of folks have been having nationally, as to how we could build across lines of difference with each other, or within lines of commonalities. But um, I'm just really a big fan of theirs. I subscribe to them.
Mhm.
I get their information, and Joel, if you can fill in some of the gaps for me there, that would be great.
Yeah, yeah, and I just want to say, When I got accepted into it, Rob was one of the first ones that reached out and congratulated me, and we committed to connecting consistently just to share my experience in the fellowship. But um, as Rob stated, I think independent sector, it's a convener of folks, that individuals that are doing extraordinary work already, and can sharpen their skills, can really expand their horizons, and connect with folks not only in their own city but in different cities, and and to build the tools to better do the work that they're doing. So I'm really excited to be part of uh, this fellowship, and I've learned already so much. But one of the things that I love about it too is that there's a give and take. There, like, when we're not. Um, we may not necessarily agree what's being presented. There's room for that dialogue, right? There's room to say,
Mhm.
okay, we would do it this way, or this is our experience. So um, the, the power of having individuals that are from different that do different types of work, but have a common ground um, of really building community and improving their cities and families' lives. I mean, it's extraordinary. So I get a ton of energy every time we come together. I'm looking forward to coming together in September in person in Dallas. We're gonna be all together, and there's gonna be a time of learning, a time of sharing, and a time of community building.
And I understand it's a 2-year program.
Correct, correct. It's a 2 year commitment, big commitment, but very very much worth it.
How do you think Bridging Fellows is going to impact your work with SWOP and in the city and in Chicago Cares? How do you think that's? What do you expect from it?
Yeah, I number one, I think some meaningful relationships are going to be built with folks. I think it's going to give me, well, it's already giving me imagination, creativity, and energy for the current work that I'm having. Um, but it's also giving me the ability to connect individuals that are working on something that I'm not working on, but I'm already thinking of ways. Well, how can I connect you to my network, to the folks that I'm in relationship with? And so it really is really bringing bridging to life, right? It's
Yes,
fruition. It's not just theory. It's not just we're just listening, right? It's about action, and
right.
everybody's taking advantage of each other's expertise and the relationships that we all have, our networks.
And without the bridging or the networking, there's no connection. In my opinion, it just connects everything.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, I I want to stress that the connection just for the sake of connection is not going to lead to anything, right? Or it may not lead to anything meaningful.
Yeah.
And I think the type of connections that we're having is like it's deep relational, right? It's sitting down, me and Rob sitting down and learning about each other's self-interest, what makes us tick, what wakes us up in the morning, the work that we're doing. And so it's not just work, right? It's about
Yes.
humanity and what is it that we desire for each other, and how are we gonna help each other move towards each other's goals. So
Getting to know the person.
oh, without a doubt, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to address both of you on this, well, how has the partnership between Chicago Cares and SWAP affected you two personally, affected the organizations? Let's talk about that partnership.
Yeah, I could start if you're good with that, Joel. I think for Chicago Cares, it really has helped us, like I said, live into our values around equity, and moving away from traditional versions of volunteerism and really figuring out how we can build these coalitions, build these partnerships between the public and private sector, and do it in a way that addresses harm and repair, but
Hmm.
also centers the community and community leaders and community voice. And so I think one of the earliest lessons that I learned from SWOP um, was around that idea of like, how can we be uh, in our work, not only conveners, not only bridgers, but also interceptors. We do a lot of
Hmm.
intercepting, and we do a lot of intentional relationship building and repair conversations and things like design convenings to really make sure that we're doing this in a way that not just meets the needs. And actually, this is something I learned at a conference just recently, the Points of Light conference, from a colleague, Brianna, to be able to co-dream with your partner. And I think that's what I hear you talk about, Joel, when you talk about one-to-ones, right? Like, it's not just about knowing what my needs are and what your needs are, but like, what are our dreams? Can we dream together? Can you learn more about my vision for the future, for myself, for my community? And I think that's what we've been able to do within that space with SWOP, is really learn a lot about what they feel um, is the future for their community and for their area and for the work that they're doing, and how we can be supportive in that, and for them as well to learn our vision, like how we want to transform and redefine volunteerism, and how they could support us in our dreams and our vision as well.
So it seems like both organizations help each other.
Yeah, yeah. It's there's definitely a give and take here for sure. Apart from working, just I love working with Rob, and there's another young lady that's part of the team too, Melissa, and just the incredible organization, the leadership there. I think there's an understanding that we know what we know and we don't know what we don't know, right? And so we're willing to meet each other where we're at, and I think on the front end, swap, we struggled with this idea of like uh, connecting with corporate partners, and because that's not what that wasn't our approach. Our approach was very different, but we went into it, into this with an open mind. And what we have found is that uh, this relationship with Chicago Cares, this partnership, it's yielded just so many benefits. I think the ability to bring folks that are not from our community to come, and be part of the work, and understand what are the real issues, and also connecting with folks. Some of these corporations that the Chicago Cares has connected us with, some of these corporations, um, they have individuals that live in our community and don't know about the great work that's happening, and so
Okay.
being able to connect with folks in that way has been powerful. But also just having real honest conversations about, how are we all accountable and how are we not accountable. How are like we I've had conversations with um, some of the corporate partners that come in and say, hey, we need more than just one event, right, where you come in and volunteer. There has to be long-term commitment to our communities, especially
Yes.
folks that are benefiting from our communities. So, Chicago Cares, apart from the interactions from their staff with our organizers, and it's great conversations, but I think they have opened the door for us to engage corporate partners, to hold them accountable, and to and and really to open other possibilities, and really do some meaningful work. We're building out our workforce development because of our connection that Chicago Cares um, did with us with Pepsi, right? Somebody that we probably would not be engaging, but because of that relationship that was built through Chicago Cares, we're now going to be impacting so many young people's lives and connecting them to meaningful career pathway programs. So. And I could just go on and
Yeah.
on some of the examples, but it's been great. And it hasn't all been easy, but like I said, we've met each other where we're at, and we're growing together for sure.
Well, it may not have been easy, but it seems to have had very positive results.
Yep, without a doubt.
So
Yeah,
if If there's anything else that you'd like to tell us about before we end our podcast, please feel free.
Yeah, I'd just love to add on to that, Joel, and say that I think that it's important to note, um, when we look at ourselves as bridgers at Chicago Cares, we kind of look at it as a messy web, right? Joel, you talked about coalitions earlier, but I think in the lane that we're in, we have this messy web, right? Because we're working with so many different entities, institutions, corporations, individuals, and everybody's at a different place. Everybody's at a different space in their own work, and so I think it's been really powerful to work with an organization like SWOP, who has helped us stretch and like work our muscles when it comes to ideas around sustainability and deep like community investment, and repair and those kinds of maybe strategies that we take as an organization, that are difficult. Those are challenging ones to implement and to work with our maybe corporate partners or volunteers, to kind of shift mindsets and shift a direction of how the volunteering maybe typically works. We have a partner in SWAP who that's their expectation of us, right? Like they want to
Mhm.
challenge folks. They want to um, create partnerships that are deep, that are lasting, that make deeper impact past one day. And so I think that once again, going back to my point earlier, we wouldn't be able to bridge the way we do without partners, um, that have these sorts of expectations. I think we can push our folks as much as possible, but we need that messy web. We need folks there at the table, shifting power to them so that they can kind of lead the way. And so I just want to once again thank SWAP for all the work that they've done with us, and the ways in which we keep learning from each other and growing within our work. And just say out loud that like sometimes and many times I think bridging is supposed to be messy, and that's okay. Like if you're listening
Right.
to this and you're like, this is hard. Like, yeah, it's supposed to be hard, like, and that's a good thing. And it's rewarding when you get to some of those achievements and accomplishments through that. But I think just knowing that it's very difficult and challenging work.
Right. Well, generally, I think that usually positive things to have for positive things to happen, it takes a lot of work and it's not easy.
Yeah.
And it seems like, SWAP, Chicago Cares, and all your partners are up to that challenge. You don't go into it thinking it's going to be easy.
Yeah, I think that's right. And Rob, thank you for those thoughts and those words. We feel equally the same. Um, I am confident of this that when we were approached with the possibility of partnering with Chicago Cares, if the central purpose was not bridging for power to build power, then we would not be part of it, right? We want to be part of bringing folks together to build power, not for anything other than that, right? It's about building power for our communities, and really ensuring that the work that we're doing, it's going to improve the lives of the folks that we are in relationship with and we're accountable to. And so I think that Chicago Cares, um, especially under the leadership of Ellen Ray, they get that. They get the power dynamics, and really understand that to build community, to bring folks together, no matter how messy it is, it has to have the common ground of building power for communities that are impacted by so many issues, right?
Mhm.
Impacted by racial inequities, and we could just go on and on, right? But it's all about building power and sustainability for our communities, and we really appreciate that spirit in which that they really we really established this partnership. So just want to thank Rob and folks at Chicago Kids for this remarkable partnership.
Well, I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Nicole Amling from Chicago Cares for connecting us. She's been very gracious in connecting us with Ellen and Cecile previously, and now Rob and Joel. We really appreciate Nicole's work on this. So thank you for tuning in to this episode of Bridging Chicago. You can connect with us on Instagram and Twitter, where our handle is @BridgingChicago. You can also find us on LinkedIn by searching Bridging Chicago or visiting www.bridgingchicago.com. Rob and Joel, thank you so much for joining us. I wish you the best of luck in your endeavors, and Joel, absolutely the best of luck with Bridging Fellows. I really wish you a lot of luck.
Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Bridging Chicago, as produced by the SATC Solutions Center. Nothing contained in this podcast shall constitute financial, investment, legal, and/or professional advice. No professional relationship of any kind is created between you and the podcast host or guest. You are urged to speak with your financial, investment, or legal advisors before making any investment or legal decisions. Furthermore, the opinions expressed in this podcast are not necessarily the opinions of SATC Solutions Center, SATC Law, or any of its employees. This podcast is created by the hosts and guests' individual capacities. All opinions on this podcast are or have been rendered based on specific facts, under certain conditions, and are subject to certain assumptions and may not and should not be used or relied upon for any other purpose, including but not limited to, or use in or in connection with any investment purposes or legal proceeding.